Hello and welcome to SOUQ Pulse. I'm happy, you're happy. The rains have come. Productivity for those that are tilling the ground, it's here. Productivity for those that also decide to do the right things has always been here before the rain came. So hey, listen, we're here live on SOUQ Pulse. I almost said sports, but it's all good. We're here on SOUQ News. And remember, we are all about positive programming. It doesn't matter where you go. It doesn't matter what you say, as long as the information you're consuming is not moving you forward or has the potency of making you do the right thing or think the right way, then you are definitely missing out. So stay tuned to SOUQ News. Here on SOUQ Pulse, we'll tell you one direct line. Never stop talking. Whether it's good, whether it's bad, we'll talk about it and we'll tell you the same thing. We can make our society better when we take actions from our communication. We reach out, we ask questions, we deliberate about it, we discuss. We don't just go out and quarrel, if it pushes us to. But we talk. The good, we talk. When those particular loans, it doesn't matter where you're getting them from, your own banks, those small organizations that give you loans and put interest of 2 digits, let's not give direct numbers. Or it could be international organizations. We ask you, talk. Is it making your country better? Talk. Is it making economies better? Talk. Is businesses flourishing in your state? Are your state governments utilizing the money given to them from the center? Or are the resources coming from the state benefiting the people? Or is the state governor being the best he can be? We just talk. It's SOUQ Pulse and we say welcome. My name is SOUQ. John Rogers SOUQ. Right now, you know where we are heading to from that last 2 lines. But I'm always pleased and always a delight to have our guest still here with us. He's still in Nigeria. He's not left yet. And we will get to introduce him and open up the topic and tell you where to go to. Remember, go to our social media handles. Go to all our platforms and join this conversation. We've been deliberating and talking productivity as a team for a while. And you know, for us to get productive, we need to block areas of wastage and channel those particular funds to places that are productive, to places where industry can grow, to places, it could be education, it could be health, but places that push and move us forward. And today we'll be looking at one other area everybody in Africa talks about, but not everybody does something about it. And in this particular place, just like we say, put a mirror, you can see yourself right there. The image you see, we're not asking you if you're guilty or not. Today we are looking at what are, like read my lips, what are the best practices if we say we want to cut down the cost of governance? What are the best practices in cutting down the cost of governance? Look at your country. Name is not an issue. Size is not an issue. Is the cost of governance in your country a burden to the people? How large is your service? How large are the political class ruling? How large are the dependents? It all cut across. How large are the ministries? That's what we're looking at today. And there is no other person to do justice to this than our own in-house analyst. He is more like the other half of this particular program. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please join me as I welcome on SOUQ Pulse for this beautiful day, Dr. Idahosa. Sir, you're welcome to SOUQ Pulse.
I think it's a delight to be here after the award.
After the party.
After the award, to be here and celebrate the good work that SOUQ Pulse and all that sister program on the SOUQ News Television doing that has, of course, endeared us to the SME community leading to the recognition. So I'm proud to be here.
Thank you very much, sir. And thank you for not leaving the shores yet. At least we'll still have you for a bit till you leave, though. Now, let's start this. Lot of people, I won't use the word complain, neither will I use something close to it, but we see across Africa, from the Middle East side of Africa down to the northern part of Africa, from this side to the desert, oceans to ocean, we see African governments who, a lot of times, we've seen African governments borrow not just to fund budget, but part of the money borrowed to fund that budget also funds the executives in those budgets, the executive arms of whatever line items in those budgets. We've seen governments that, permit me to use the word, things that should not be has become a norm. How can we start cutting down, this more like a generic thing now, how can we start cutting down the cost of governance in Africa? Not just looking at Nigeria, all of Africa.
Well, I think yesterday, incidentally, we were having a very frank conversation with a colleague here who told me he also ventured to participate at the councillor level in his own state, in the southwest here. And somebody invited him and said, well, oh, you are very cerebral, and I want you to come with me so that we can go and think about how to deliver our local government. And so he just come as councillor.
Deliver the local government from what?
Yes, of course, from bad governance, as it were.
Okay.
And of course, he said he was invited, but at a certain point when they were supposed to start to launch, and the man said, well, you see, we have to look for ways to contribute you for your support for a party and what it's doing. You need to bring like 500,000. And that was about 10 years ago. And you can imagine what 5,000 would mean for somebody who want to come and service people. And he said, he looked at it and said, so you mean my hard-earned money, I just go and bring 500,000 to further my ambition to come and help my people. But unfortunately, according to him, he said the chap eventually had to step down at the critical hour. So he was asking himself, assuming he has put in the 500,000, and he can imagine how that thing just go down the drain. So these are the things that you see in African politics that's actually increasing costs in terms of project delivery, because a lot of interests are involved. You need to settle so many people. And this settlement culture of corruption, as Claude Ake has called it before he died, which, according to him, were introduced into our lexicon by the military junta. It's one big problem that we have to contend with. And I think that is the real elephant in the room, because if you see a project figure in Africa, you see you can be times 10, times 20, in some cases even about 1,000 times what it would cost to do it elsewhere, because you have to factor in a lot of interest. And once this interest is not accommodated, you see destabilization around in the environment. And I think these are things that Africans need to really settle within them, because like I feel, it's because democracy is alien to us, and our own way of governing ourselves did not involve having to be looking for people to give you support. Once you are born in my own part of this Africa, nature gives you the birthright to rule, so you don't need people to vote for you. So it's easy for you to be able to actually carry out some principal thing with a team that you feel that can deliver with you. So I think that's what democracy has brought to us. So you have to go around lobbying people, putting money down, and you just imagine, for example, you have over 140,000 polling units, for example, in this country called Nigeria, and a party had to feed an agent in all these polling units for presidential, and you are going to see that, of course, those who are going to stand there, you are going to give them coke, you're going to hire canopy, you are going to give them lunch, and then, of course, you give them transport to come to the booth. By the time you factor all this in here, the volume is rising. And those who are bringing out the money to ensure that this coordination is done, it will be very difficult at the end of the day to tell them that, well, it was Father Christmas because we came to govern. So this is a problem. And I think that's where conversation needs to be had, that once we can reduce the kind of investment that people put into politics, I think to a very large extent, we will be able to curtail some of these issues that we talk about. So that's when people can actually demand governance from those who rule us. And that's where we can be morally right and legitimate in asking for good governance, as it were. But as long as some people who represent us, whether they are traditional rulers, whether they are influence molders within communities, youth leaders, all these ones continue to put pressure on aspirants to bring money so that they can leverage on certain things, or even supporters begin to spend money on behalf of the aspirant. Once we cannot stop that and we see this thing as a clear contest, let people come to contest on the basis of ideals and ideas, then of course we may be having nightmare solving this problem.
Okay. I really needed to let you land.
And I have landed.
Good, yes. It's just that where you landed, we are yet to find ourselves. You've taken us to where we don't know. But it's all good. There was one particular line you dropped there, and you called it government of settlement.
The settlement culture of corruption. Yes.
Well, if you call it settlement culture of corruption, let's just give it government of settlement. Now, you also brought this out. Investment in politics.
Yeah, it's huge. It's massive.
Nations are investing in industrial productivity.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas Africa is investing in politics, which means they see politics as a means to an end.
Oh, yeah.
Direct profit-induced means to an end. Now, which you also say is a very wrong notion.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Now, if we as a people, we as Africans, can rejig and rethink that process, that's where you're going to. Okay, now, let's now go further. We are here. We practice the democracy, whether it's ours or not, borrowed or not. We've decided to practice it. The Constitution has enshrined it. And yet, now we do it. Now, this is where we find ourselves. Yet, with this same government of settlement, with this same investment in politics, both from who is contending, those supporting political parties and co. How can we say, okay, before we can now be able to start nipping these things, some things needs to change?
Yeah.
Can you talk about the service? Talk about the government civil service. We see a whole lot of over-bloated civil service.
Yeah.
Is that not part of an issue? We see a lot of ghost workers. In some states, we've seen numbers of ghost workers far more than those that were employed.
Yeah, you see, those are part of the solutions that we may be talking about as the issue make progress. But you see, we're just looking at basically what are responsible for the situation on ground that we are contending with. See, because if you don't understand this background, it is very easy for us to be blaming people for some certain things. I remember some years ago, I was very close to one of my cousins who was following a big man who was contesting presidency. And he was begging somebody in the state, and he said, please, you step down for me because I have to win this election. If other people from other regions are supporting me, you need to support me. And the gentleman said, with all respect, I would love to support you. But if I don't win this election, I am ruined. Because my houses in London, I have mortgaged them for the purpose of this election. So this is what I'm talking about, a huge investment in terms of politics. And we see all this play out on a daily basis. And people cannot just take their eye away. And that's why somehow...
Are there no other means of raising funds for politics?
Yeah, because that is where the real issue is for us. As a political scientist, and who has studied party development and structure across the globe, I see that there's something that's a misnomer in the politics of Africa, where, of
course...
Is
it a misnomer in the politics of Africa, or
yes,
in the parties that were formed in the first place?
I think it's the evolution of the political system in Africa, where it's always by sponsorship.
Sponsorship of...
Yes, of course, that some certain elite class will have to sponsor some other persons or poor people to become members of their political party. That was the situation where that young man that I mentioned just now found himself. So he wants to contribute 500,000 to sponsor some people to come register as member of their political party. So these guys who are being sponsored, they are not driven by ideal. So they are promised that, oh, we will give you a card. You see, when we start to share our largesse, we will make it reach you. So we bribe them to come and become a member of the party. And therefore, for them to continue to remain in that party, you will continue to fund them. Whereas in the most civilized and advanced democracies in the world, people willingly come to join members. And therefore, they are able to contribute membership due from month to month, from year to year, to support the operations of the party. Because they believe in the ideals, they support the ideology which that particular party represents, and this is the driving force, that knowing that if our common interest, because in political science they taught us that party helps aggregate interest of a group of people. So it's like a gatekeeper in the political system, sifting out people who don't believe in your ideas. So we come together as an ideologue, and then we are pursuing a common goal, which of course we feel will benefit or be responsible for the happiness of the greater majority of the people within the populace. So this is what it is. Now here, you have to bribe people to become a member of your party. So that is fundamentally wrong. And those are the things that we would need to deal with for us to be able to have people who get into office without looking for ways to settle. So what you mean by the over-bloated civil service that we're seeing is that when I eventually become a government officer, what I need to do is that I need to go recruit some of the youths in my community and put them in any agency of government and say, oh, I have recruited some 20 people in our community in the last election. Vote for me and I will recruit more. So whether the service requires this manpower or the people who have been recruited have the competence to actually deliver on the job that is being given is a different kettle of fish. So what they are just interested in is that we are accumulating people into the center as a way of saying to the people, we have performed, and continue to make them to remain loyal to their political party. So this is the fundamental, and this is what we need to deal with. But because, again, I said sometime here, Babangida didn't help issues when, after calling out Nigerians to bring out their resources to set up political association. I remember people like Ganifa Ami, God bless his soul, who went to Abuja with trailer loads of registration forms that were filled by people who felt that he was suitable of leading them. And of course, that process was aborted by that military regime. And of course, formed two political parties, which of course nobody had a stake in. You were all equal joiner and equal command. So this is where, of course, we have gotten a whole lot of things right in terms of political evolution. If we have followed the trajectory of our nationalist father, we saw that people like Obafemi Awolowo were actual leftists. We saw Nade Azikiwe at the center somehow. And then, of course, Ahmadu Bello was the rightist. So we could have evolved from that time if we were developing a political structure that people will understand what it means to be a Democrat and people will know what it means to be a conservative. Okay. So this is what the military has done to our psyche and our political system that really is responsible for most of the problem that we are facing in Africa.
Okay. This submission still takes us back to this major point you made earlier, government of settlement, thanks to what's happening in politics right now. But now let's come back to 2024. Let's look at every African state. Some are getting it right, a lot are getting it right, but most are getting it wrong. Let's take, for example, Ghana, Nigeria, Cameroon, those in West Africa. We have government in all these places. Our other neighbors down southern part of West Africa, Senegal, they had their election some weeks ago. Same thing is going to happen very soon in some other African countries. Now, how can we say people take an example from either this country or that country and start cutting down the cost of governance? Because if we don't do this, we'll keep wallowing in this same issue.
I had a conversation some time ago, I think it was last month when I was in Kigali, on this issue, especially with the entrenchment of Paul Kagame in the politics of Rwanda. And Rwanda asked me a very simple question and said to me, the West can't teach us democracy, for example. And it raised very two critical issues, which for me is germane and something that we in Africa must have to look really into, which is the tenure of leadership. You have a 4-year tenure in some states, some 5-year tenure. And after a 5-year tenure, you see a real whole struggle to come back for a second term. So this is a real problem, and this will not allow people to actually deliver. Because while you are working hard to see that you retain a second term, you have sacrificed governance on the altar of politics. So this is the issue. Many African states, because you see in a situation like in Rwanda, where Paul Kagame has been there for over 25 years as the leader of that country and has been consistent over time, although they have elections, which seems like a referendum, because I read in their local daily the other day about 7 political parties coming together and endorse him as their presidential candidate for the parties. So this reflects the African heritage of kinship. And I think those are the kind of things that we may need to look at in Africa so that we don't have this second tenure syndrome or third tenure syndrome. And if people come into office, you can have a one straight term of 5 years, and then after 5 years, then you give space to other people to try. And
if you say we do one term, be it 5, 6, 7, whatever years that is chosen in Africa, whereby once
I think 5 is okay because of the strategic nature of the number 5 in terms of long-term strategy. So you know that you have 5 years to deliver. So if after 5 years you cannot deliver, I don't think even if they give you 10 years, you'll be able to do anything significant. So you can use this opportunity to be able to create a name for yourself and then deliver on governance. And that's one nature. Now, we also need to ensure that there's some supremacy of party, where the political head...
Can we leave party out of...
No, we cannot leave them out because it is critical to the bad governance. You see, if you are the governor of...
If we hold on to party, then that means we should also be able to call out party for the wrongdoings of whoever is leading.
No. The point I'm making is simple. If, for example, in Nigeria today, APC shouldn't see Bola Tinubu as the leader of their party, or Lagos State see Governor Sanwo-Olu as the leader of the party. In that case, there will be no party supremacy. When you have party supremacy, where of course the governor is subject to some other power.
Why should the president be subject to another power?
Oh yes, he's a president.
He's the president of Nigeria.
No.
So if my president is subject to another power, which means that...
No. That is just self-deception.
Self-deception.
Oh yes, because
is the party stronger than the state?
Oh, the party is not stronger than the state, but the president cannot be stronger than the vehicle that carried him into the office of the state.
Hold on. Now, this is a different topic altogether. This is a
different I know it's different, but you see, it is fundamental.
Remember this. Let's have it at the back of our minds. That if we take, for example, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, not every APC member voted for Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And not only APC members voted for Bola Ahmed Tinubu. I don't know if you understand.
So therefore...
I don't need to belong to that party.
Yeah, therefore, since he's the president of Nigeria, he should not become the leader of your party.
Okay, that is party problem. So let party solve that
problem. It's not a party problem. What it means is that it's not just... I just use it as a case.
Okay.
Because it's same thing across... If you see what's happening in Rivers State today, you will see the issue in Rivers State today is who is the leader of the party.
Now, can I ask a question? Now, if if when party problem becomes a national problem, then there is a problem.
Chepo, because what we always inherit
Can I answer that
at
question?
the end of the day
Okay,
is that it is a problem of the party that actually becomes the national problem.
Which should not be.
We should not have been. And this is because the party is not independent.
Okay, now let's leave party out of this. Let's go back to where we're coming from. Is state fund is as in Africa, do we see issues or do we see examples where state funds party?
Everywhere. Why do you hear people talking about the power of incumbency?
So when you say everywhere, is it across the world or Africa?
Across Africa.
Across Africa. Now we are looking at, for those that will be wondering what's going on, we are asking ourselves a direct question. If we say Africa must get productive, then we must stop and block every wastage. It doesn't matter how small or how big. If the leader of any country is spending your money and not accountable, no matter where that money is going to, we are saying, no, let's put it in productive endeavors. Now, let's get to this place. Earlier on, using Nigeria as an example, the president of the country announced that there were going to be some, will I call it short for, some ministries were going to be merged. Some agencies were going to be shut. Some in the civil service were going to be, one way or the other, rehabilitated. Those that will get to work somewhere. But now that process is still on, and we'll update you as that goes on. Now we see across Africa, we see duplicity of agencies. We see duplicity of government establishment. Things that one establishment can do, we see it being carried on by several. Things that a state can do, we see federal doing it. Things that a local government can do, we still see all this doing it. And all this gets to where money is being spent. I know you will take me back to somebody is trying to settle his party people for being loyal. But we need to outgrow that and look ourselves in the face and tell ourselves, no.
You know,
how can we stop this?
You just mentioned the Orosai report. And of course, it was celebrated by a whole lot of people. Government has the political will now to see how to implement that report. But you see, event really had overtaken the Orosai report after 12 years. Because at the time that report was written, Nigerian civil agencies and government parastatal were about 600. And as we speak, there are over 1,000. So which means there are even some existing agencies that were not captured in that report. So you actually need to update that report to be able to capture those who are actually agencies that are relevant to development or relevant to the economic growth and progress of the nation. This is what you have. And this is what I'm saying, because I cannot leave the thesis of Claude Ake that politics is what has underdeveloped us.
Politics has
underdeveloped us. Because
are we going to dwell in politics underdeveloping us, or we are looking at ourselves in the face and telling ourselves, do right, do better, wake up?
You know, a friend of mine said to me, there's a way a system is designed that even the Pope will become corrupt.
So let's look at the issue of contracts. We are asking ourselves this direct question. How can we cut down spending? Okay, that's maybe I'm calling it money. How can we cut down the spending, the monies, expenditure of government, be it those elected and those not elected, and use it for productive things?
You know, earlier today, I was sharing with somebody when a certain person made a comparison between the 700-kilometer Lagos-Calabar coastal line that was going to cost Nigeria about $16 billion, and compare with same that was done, which is almost 10,000 kilometers that was done elsewhere, that was less than $2 billion. And I said, the cases are not the same. Now, and I was pointing attention to the Minister of Works meeting, stakeholder meeting on that coastal line, which is supposed to have been federal government property by the littoral laws of states, that 260 meters inside the water 260 meters outside of the water belong to the sovereign government of a state. And therefore, nobody has right over that portion of land. That's an international convention that is respected everywhere globally. But this coastal line we're doing now, within this same radius, where a lot of illegality has happened, and you are seeing a mass of people coming around government to say they have to be settled
to get this project done,
so that the project can happen.
Okay.
And therefore, if government wants this project to succeed, they are left with no options. Because you also find here interests within the various political groups who also are within that corridor, and they are appealing to authority to ensure that they get claim from government. But somebody should be able to say, okay, oh, this is illegality. We are not going to pay because this land is government land and government didn't allocate it to any human being. So whoever allocated it should be the person to pay.
Why can't we take
that
line?
Now you can't toe that line because of political consideration.
Political consideration.
Yes, that is the point.
Over national interest.
So that is what.
So we still go back to government of
the
settlement.
same issue. So this is why I'm saying to you, until the party system in Africa is well formed, the issue of governance, where you can talk about accountability, you can talk about openness, you can talk about transparency, you can talk about ethics, cannot take place.
Okay. So we're having this particular, you call it the big elephant in the room. Now, I think as it is right now, it's no longer the big elephant. It has grown beyond the big elephant. This government of settlement
is a monster.
Now, it means different things to different people, and across different boards, it means a whole lot to different people. Now, we couldn't even look at the bloated civil service, be it the states or be it the federal.
But this is the point I'm making.
It boils down to the same government of settlement.
I have a friend of mine who was a DG in one agency. I don't want to call name. And he was pressured. This is a learning institute, a learning agency. They are not revenue based. They don't make money. And he said, when I did assembly also, they were asking him. And the man came and called him and said, DG, please, take this file. Over 500 CV and say, find a way to engage them. And he was telling him there's no budget. He said, please, find a way.
But
after all the arguments.
If the DG was creative, he would create a farm and engage them.
So how would the DG, where will he get the budget to create a farm?
It's easy to create a farm than going to fix them.
But even if you have to say create a farm, it's not within his mandate to go to do farm. So
the Ministry of Agri create a farm.
Yeah, but there's also a committee that is in charge of Ministry of Agri, who is also doing the same. Okay. So this is the issue, and this is a fundamental thing we need to deal with as a people, because you can't be talking about progressive development without addressing the fundamental issue which are inherent in our polity.
Okay. Can we come to where you've taken us to now? Let's also now look at Nigeria. We have ministers. Now we have to look for S to add to the ministers. Maybe we look for another S to add to the ministers. At a point in time, we don't even know how many ministers we have. Minister of State, we have a major minister. Each ministry, a whole lot of them, have 2 ministers. And the countries that are bigger than us, that we are copying democracy from, have secretaries that are not half of what we have. Who exactly is fooling who? Who is funding for all this?
We are talking about minister having secretaries. Even what they call them, special advisor, are also having essays.
We are talking about the ministers first.
Now, but what I'm saying is that the chain is that the government appoints a minister who is supposed to be an aide to either the governor or the president, as the case may be, as his advisor, his cabinet, who think with him and give him idea. Now, the Constitution empowered the minister to have special assistants. Now, even the special assistants also have special assistants.
So we have PA to the SA to the minister.
So this is what we are talking about. So you can't be looking at this issue in isolation.
Okay. Now, you see, this is where we are heading to. We talk. We don't just talk. We push it out there and they listen. That it's been happening, that we see this situation or this kind of behavior across Africa does not make it right.
It's not right at all.
Good. So where exactly can we say, let's draw the line on this?
Yeah, I think this is where we can draw a line. It's a leadership function. And to say if you don't have a competence to advise the president as a minister, you don't have any business being there.
Why should we have this number of ministers in the first place?
So
owners are looking for who has the competence or not.
Yeah, so government can become leaner at the executive level. We've not even come to the bureaucracy. We are even talking about political appointees who are in their thousands. So I remember some 5 years ago in my own state, where the governor has personal assistants from all the wards in the state. All the ward. There was somebody who is called the PA to the governor in all the wards in the state. Now, these are political structure put in place to win elections. That is why I'm saying to you, when Cladake says that the fundamental issue in the Nigerian state, for example, is the prioritization of politics above national interest or economy. So once, of course, politics become the superstructure upon which our economy is going to be built, like the good book says, any house that is built upon a sand will sure crumble.
Okay. Now, for this particular house of yours that you just mentioned now, Africa is not going to crumble. But those that are doing the building definitely will be the ones to crumble. And we will watch it happen. So where we are right now, we still have these questions to ask. Where is the rule of law while all this are happening? Is it still being affected by that same government of settlement, where whoever is in charge appoints who is in charge of taking that particular rule or taking that particular measures to make sure these kind of things don't happen?
You see, there are a lot of things we joke about in this country. And I think it was the same, the last regime, where somebody says that when you join our party, all of your sins are forgiven. So this is the point. And we cannot...
Who paid the sacrifice for the person's sins to be forgiven?
Oh, yes, of course. By mere fact of crossing carpet, the sins are forgiven.
The party made the sacrifice?
Yes, of course. And this is why you see...
Which means the party needs to die?
No. This is why...
Yes, for your sins to be forgiven, somebody has to die. So if you cross lines and go to the party and your sins are forgiven, to God be the glory. R.I.P. to the party.
Yeah, but the party are not dying, because this is why you see this crisscrossing of politicians from one party to the other. Because when you become a member of a ruling party,
your sins are forgiven.
Your sins are forgiven, as it were. And it is not today, it has always been there. And therefore, people who commit infractions, misdemeanors, come to hide under the gaze of his party, who seems to be the overlord, and they are above the law or the constitution of the land. This is the issue. That's why my emphasis here is that we cannot begin to talk about a national revival or reformation without first and foremost addressing the value system of our country. And this is where we need to start, where we be able to say, this is right, this is wrong. And we know what is wrong and we know what is right. And this is instilled in the life and in the heart of people, where people understand what the function of government is. That if I'm contesting to be a councillor, I am not one to award contracts to myself. And therefore, people should not be demanding from me and assessing my performance in terms of the number of borehole or school I built. That as a lawmaker, mine is to make law for the good governance of the state. And if I am going to be assessed, I will be assessed on the basis of the number of bills that I have raised in the House. Now, if we are able to do all this and understand that it's not the role of the lawmaker, for example, to give employment to people because it's not an MD of any company, then of course we can begin to deal with the issue of good governance.
Okay. As we speak right now, cutting down cost of governance is also good governance. I will agree with you on that last 4 words. But the other ones where you took us to, we are still finding our fate. Now, let's go back and ask ourselves this question. Majorly to you, sir. Now we have a lot of issue of hang-ons. Human beings hanging on to leaders. Human beings hanging on to be the political leaders, be it those in civil service, be it those in the military. And in one way or the other, it's more like a right in Africa. I don't know how they got to there. I don't know what they contributed to you being there, but we see this play out where whoever is in charge of that particular agency, that ministry, or that country have this set of people that he has to settle one way or the other, directly or indirectly. Is it ever possible? Do you ever see an end to this lifestyle, to this way of life?
Yes, of course, it's possible. I advocated in the last meeting I had with some government officers that, look, the only way to solving this problem is through deployment of technology in government so that we can reduce human interface with citizens. Let me give you one very practical example. I'm coming from the Rwanda town into the airport, for example, and there are cameras that are stationed on the checkpoint. So police duty is to ensure that whatever is in your body, you put it out, you bring out all your bag from the car. Dogs ransack it to ensure that nothing is crossing. And of course, you know, in that very open place, nobody will be able to ask you about what you bring. Is not possible. Now, getting into the car park in the airport is digital. You press a button, the receipt comes out for you, the pole goes up, and you drive in. And when you are driving out, you go check this to ensure that you have not spent more than the time that's required for payment, because if you just drop off, you are not supposed to pay. Now, the guy dropped me, and of course this thing opened and he entered. Now I come in here. The guy who come to pick me up is going to drive out, and they are saying, where's your receipt? He give to them and say, this one costs 500 naira. You have to give them cash. And say, I've not even spent 2 minutes here. How do we account for all these fiscal cash collections? This is where, of course, you have a lot of human interventions that people can keep your file under the table and ask you for settlement before your file is treated. Now, if this is minuted online, and of course the president is sitting down and on the dashboard is seeing that this file is supposed to be moving, and there is an alarm light that is saying, look, there's something happening to this file. It draws attention to it on the dashboard and say, who is here keeping this file? It will be easy to do an oversight on what is happening, because the level of human interference will be reduced. And until Africa embrace fully technology to drive this process, where you have human being, like my mentor has said to me, when a man does what is right, is abnormal. When? Because of the sin nature in man.
Which of the man are you talking about?
Human being.
Okay. Now, let's still go ahead, because you see, this money, we must find it. You see, this budget, it has to be used judiciously. Now, let's go to one last question before our time tells us to pack up. We get to see budgets across Africa, and we'll see the budget going to the executive, be it those local governments, state governments, or the presidencies across Africa. What can we do to reduce those amount of budget? Because those budgets are not just servicing the families of the people that are elected. They are servicing properties. Some of the properties, the the executive might not even stay there in the entire year. It's servicing, like for Nigeria, it's servicing an air fleet. How many is in use? It's servicing several other things. And we are looking at how can we cut costs. What do you think can be done to reduce the amount of budgeting going to these particular places and money used for something else that is productive for the state?
Yeah, for me, it's for us to be able to evolve a national strategy where, of course, key stakeholders sit down together and said, what do we really want? And that fundamental question we have to ask and settle it once and for all. And then we draw out a strategy and say, this is what we're going. And in that strategy document, we'll be able to say, okay, what are the operations that is required for this goal to be achieved? We assess the risk and allocate them appropriately. And then, of course, we won't be embarking on this, what they call envelope system and this incremental budget strategy, or zero budget strategy. Africa need to embrace performance budget. And we look at the room and say, what exactly do we need? How many papers do this office consume in a month if clerks are not stealing them? And we say, okay, yes, in a week, we use 1 ream. So in 1 month, we will use 4 ream. And then in a year, we know the number of frames that we can use. And that's what we are budgeting for. No room for excess. So if our budget is based pragmatically on actual needs, then of course, we can be on the way to making some progress. And don't also forget too, because say budget is estimate, that we also need to be very realistic about what comes in the form of revenue. So that when we are looking at, for example, the indices for setting your budget, you look at what is happening across the globe, things that are likely to happen. How would they affect the price of crude, for example? How will the exchange rate look like? What will be the inflation rate if XYZ happen? Then we factor a lot of all those things in and we say, oh, now being an oil producing country, we are hoping that oil will be selling at a stable price of $60. And say, okay, well, we can make it $50. Then, of course, we have to budget. What happened in case oil gets beyond $50? That threshold. If oil for the period under consideration sell over and above what is the benchmark, that what is the excess, government has no power to touch it as long as it's not budgeted for.
Who save it?
It has to be saved in sovereign wealth fund. And once we do that, you find that there's some discipline will come into how we use government resource.
Okay. I want to say thank you very much for being there. But first, I want to say thank you very much, Dr. Idahosa. We'll invite you, not today, but you're stuck with us for now. I want to say thank you very much for every single one that has been out there. Now, let's get this straight. For most people that might not understand, government is the driver of the policies of your nation. And the people you elected, and those in your civil service, those in the military, yeah, those are for security, but they are also there to make sure things happen. But they being there doesn't mean that we should spend the nation's money on their services or on those oiling the engine of the nation. We need to cut down at this point in time when the world is going through some financial issues. We need to cut down. So wherever
I wish you could appeal to the people to stop putting pressure on political appointees and leaders, the citizens themselves.
Now, we call them hangers on. Now, you were pity, you drew pity and refused to shoot your shot. So for every single one of us, is our responsibility, is mine, is yours, to make sure that we don't overshoot. Our budget is adhered to. If we can save from that budget, beautiful. But let's be able to put our monies in productive endeavors. Endeavors that will put jobs on the table, bring in products from Africa that we can export and stop buying from outside. And most importantly, put food on the table of everyone. I want to say thank you very much for being with us and watching SOUQ Pulse today. We'll do this again tomorrow. Thank you. Have a beautiful evening.